Continuing my quest to find a decent cheap helmet camera, I've picked this one up. It's known as the S10 in most places. Looking at the box, it does 1080p, it's got 30 meters water resistant, 12 megapixel stills, don't believe that, H.264, and of course 6G, brilliant. You don't want one of those 5G ones, do you? No, you want a 6G camera. I think that's probably something to do with the shock sensor. On the back you can see it does 1080p 30, 720p 60 and 720p 30. Takes a 32 gig card as a max size, 130 degree lens. Inside the box, that's what you get. Let's just go through a couple of these things, but we'll start with the camera first of all. Now, I'll show you the operation. It's got two buttons on the top here. Press the front one, you see the LED eventually comes on. It's a bit sluggish, this thing, to operate at times. It also vibrates when you turn it on as well. There's a little motor in there. So once you've got it turned on, then the only other thing to do is press the button at the back. That starts it recording. It doesn't vibrate when you start recording, which is a missed opportunity. But eventually the red light on the front starts flashing again, pretty sluggish in sort of reacting to that button press. And then to stop recording, press the button at the back, and the red light goes on permanently, and then hold down that one, and it's switching off now very slowly. It will go off eventually at some point in the near future, and there, that's it, red light out. So let's have a look inside the back, see what we've got in there. Well, it's a pretty simple camera, this one. All you've got in there is a slider switch to go between video and photo mode. You've got the USB port for charging it, and of course a micro SD card in the top there, 32 gig class 10 I've put in this one. So these are the mounts that you get inside the box. They're all the same kind of idea. You've got this little bit here and a bit that you push down to get the thing out of the mount. They're all plastic and they're not very well made, I don't think. That one's got a tripod screw hole in the bottom. This one's got nothing on it, so you need to use one of these supplied adhesive mounts to stick it to something. That's the one I use from a motorcycle helmet later. This thing on a strap, again, probably put that around your head or something. It's not elasticated. This one is for a handlebar, I suppose. Doesn't look too secure, but there you go. And then finally, this is the bit that goes around the camera that enables it to attach to those different things. Now you see these rubber bits on the inside here are falling out. Those are supposed to be stuck to the inside of it. Open it up like this, and I've stuck those down a little bit. You can put the camera in there like that. You can twist the camera whichever way around. It doesn't have to go that way up. You can do it sideways if you want. But close that catch and then twist it to tighten it up and hold the camera quite securely. So once you've got it in that, you then use that bottom bit there and slide it into any of those mounts. I put that adhesive one on my motorcycle helmet here, as you can see. So I'll just show you what it looks like when you slide it in. So it goes in from the back to the front like that, and click. Right, so that's it. Now you've got a bit of movement on the camera, so you can get it straight. You can see it's got that ball joint on there. You can also loosen this bit here, which enables it to go a bit more floppy. Tightening that up though, never really got it perfectly tight. It was always able to move a little bit because it's all just plastic. It's not really that secure. Now I'll show you the power lead because it's a little bit unusual. Rather than a normal USB-A to Mini B lead, it's got that, but it's got these caps on either end of it. And the idea is, of course, you can attach one of these to the back of the camera and have a waterproof power lead going into it. Now the camera itself has a battery that lasted for 88 minutes in my test, but if you have that on the back, you can of course power it and record at the same time, so you can just keep recording all day long if you wanted. And the other end terminates in this little 12 volt to 5 volt USB adapter, which has a rubber grommet on there as well. I think maybe, I was trying to figure out why you'd use one of these, perhaps on a scooter. Scooters tend to have 12 volt lighter sockets on them. Maybe that would help keep it waterproof while it was in there. But anyway, that's that. Now let's move on to changing the settings of the camera. On the memory card inside the camera, you'll find this file called user.cfg.txt. You can change the various settings in here by loading it into a text editor and changing the things after the equal signs at the top here. There's a key at the bottom that explains what those are, so you can change the still image size, you can change the video modes, date and time. That's where you change it to set it, but you can't delete the timestamp. It's always going to be on there. You can reset the camera back to standard. You can turn the G sensor on or off, not something I bother messing around with. Seamless recording, it will do seamless recording just like a dash cam, but you do have to start and stop the camera yourself. And if you put a Y at the bottom there, it will read those settings in and update the camera. Right, it's time to show you some sample clips that I've shot with this camera. I've got a few at the beginning around the usual haunts, and I've got some motorcycle footage at the end. The first thing that you'll probably notice is that the colours are oversaturated. Yo Sushi is definitely not a luminous orange. It might be orange, but not that orange. Now, I'll also show you what it looks like outside. You get the same results wherever you are. As you can see here, really bright colours, and I'm pretty sure that bus, even though it was pink, it wasn't shocking pink. Anyway, we'll go in a darker environment now. I'll cross the road and go into the Printworks and show you how the camera copes in low light. I'll warn you, I haven't taken this camera out in a vehicle at night. I've only done this low light footage here, which was enough to convince me that it doesn't perform particularly well in low light. You can see it's getting pretty dark in there, and it isn't that dark. So I'd imagine this wouldn't be a good camera to stick on your bicycle in those early winter nights and use it to record your commute. It would not cope particularly well with that. Now, I've only got 1080p 30 video to show you, because changing to any of the 720p modes would necessitate taking that text file out of the camera, putting it into a computer, changing it, saving it, putting it back in the camera again. Not something I can really do on the fly, so you've got 1080p 30 only to look at. However, if we ignore the oversaturated colours, you can see that actually the quality of the 1080p isn't all that bad. There's quite a lot of detail in here. It's quite sharp. You can see it on the brickwork here. We can change that oversaturation in editing. I'll show you more about that later on, and once you've got past that, then you don't really have too much of a bad quality of image. Notice, of course, it's shaking around a little bit here, and that's because it doesn't have built-in image stabilization, which is expected. This camera doesn't have Wi-Fi, however, there is a version of this available that does have Wi-Fi built in. Now let's just have a listen to sound for a second.
Goodbye to the pains of war. Goodbye to the children we'll never meet.
Now that's the sound quality with the waterproof cap on the camera. Let's listen to what it sounds like when the cap is removed. So the moral of that story, leave the cap on the back of the camera. I'd also reduced the volume of that in editing down to just 20% of what it originally was. Now I'll show you a couple of stills I've taken with the camera. As you can see, we've got that oversaturated colour issue, and I don't really think people buy a camera like this to take stills with, but they don't look too bad, I suppose. Anyway, here's some motorcycle footage that I shot with the camera on that helmet mount I showed you earlier on. This is the same journey I did with the Xiaomi camera a few weeks ago, so you might notice some of the same scenes. In fact, I'll do a bit of a side-by-side later to show you what the difference in the colour saturation looks like. You'll notice that the timestamp's been jumping about all over the place on this video, or you might not have done, but it has been, and that's because I set it wrong. In fact, this wasn't done in March, it was sometime in April. I figured it all out in the end. You'll see some of the scenes have the right timestamp on them. Now you'll notice that maybe when I go into these trees in a little bit here, after I've gone past that person that pulled out on me, things get a bit blocky. I've explained that in another video. There's a link in the video description if you don't really understand why this particular part will probably look pretty awful, but when I get around the corner it looks good. It's nothing to do with the camera. Now let's have a look at that thing where I was going to put them side by side so we can see what the difference in colour should really be like on these cameras. So I've got this nice scene here going over this bridge. Really blue sky. I wish the sky was that blue, but I don't think I've ever seen grass that green either. So let's bring in the Xiaomi camera, Xiaomi, pronounce it how you want, I don't really care, from the right hand side, and as you can see there, that's what the colour looks like on that. In fact, that looks a bit miserable now when you compare it side by side. You think, that's not as good a day, but that is probably more realistic than the one on the left. Now, of course, you can adjust colour saturation in most editing packages, and I'm using iMovie, and I'll do a quick demonstration of that in a second, but I can't really think that this is the kind of camera that will be sold to people that are prepared to mess around in editing packages. They just want the video to come straight out of the camera looking decent. However, we'll have a look at this scene here. As you can see, this was the over bright orange, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to tone it down just in editing, so that's what it looks like before, that's after. As you can see, that looks more normal. So let's try that out on the motorcycle. Take a freeze frame here. So that's the oversaturated one. Turn down the colour a little bit, there you go, and carry on. So that's more normal now, and when you look at it like that, it actually doesn't look bad at all. By the way, I've reduced the sound down because it's just wind noise. You can just have a listen to it now for a second. And then the final thing I want to say is that the video files are actually AVI files, not MOVs as advertised on the box, which means I had to convert them all before I imported them into iMovie. Now, whilst the mount on this seemed to work okay while I was testing it, I am concerned about its longevity. It's just a piece of plastic. It's very likely to snap, and there's probably no way you're going to get a spare one of those. It's not like a GoPro mount or something. Just something to think about there. So overall then, it's a bit of a mixed bag with this camera. It's got some pros, some cons. Let's just go through those quickly. Starting with the positives first, the camera is waterproof without the need for an additional case. It's simple to use, it produces reasonably sharp video. It's got that strange waterproof charging lead, which actually could be quite handy if you were to use this as a commuter camera on a scooter. You could charge it and record at the same time, and also do that in the rain. And for that purpose, it also can be set up to loop over the oldest footage on the memory card so that you don't need to keep deleting the card when it's full. Now, on the negative side, configuring it is via a TXT file, which is always inconvenient. It doesn't vibrate when you start recording, it only does it when you turn it on, which is a weird choice. It produces AVI video files, but it promised to do MOVs on the box. Now, some people prefer AVI, some MP4, some MOVs. However, if I see something saying it's going to do MOVs on the box, that's what I expect the camera to do. It's slow to operate at times. It's a bit dopey. The sound quality is average at best and bad at worst. Oversaturated video, that's the main problem. It's bright, it's too colourful, you'll have to edit that in post-production, and having an 88-minute battery life with a non-swappable battery is just a little bit too restricting. Now, inevitably, whenever I review a camera like this that's not quite perfect, someone will ask, well, that wasn't good, but what is a good cheap helmet camera? Truth is, I don't know. That's the reason I keep reviewing these ones that aren't quite perfect, because I'm looking for a good one and I haven't found it yet. And the only way I'm going to find it is by testing various models out. So this one isn't perfect. It's not a complete disaster either. If you think it'll do the job for you, then by all means purchase one at one of the links in the video description. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.